All right.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Welcome, everyone. We are really glad to see you tonight. Glad to have you here. I am Amy Antonucci. I'm the chair of the board of New Hampshire Peace Action Education Fund, and I'm really glad to welcome you to our Peace and Justice Conversation Series online for Monday, June 2nd, 2025. Tonight, we're welcoming Lefty Morrill with a report from the West Bank. Before that, we would like to start with an acknowledgement. We are doing our work on Nidakina, the traditional ancestral homeland of the Abenaki, Wabanaki, and Pennacook peoples, past and present. We honor with gratitude the land and water and the people who have been in relationship throughout the generations. Quick reminder on Zoom guidelines, we are recording, so we understand if you don't want your video on. That said, we love it when we do get to see you. We'll have your audio muted to start with. You can use the chat throughout to put questions in. Later, we will actually get to those questions and also hand raising where I will have folks unmute. So with that said, let me introduce our speaker to you tonight quickly here so we can get to it. Please join me in welcoming Michael Lefty Morrill, the organizing director of New Hampshire Peace Action. Lefty has been involved in groups building a better future in labor, community, environmental, peace, and faith-based organizations for many years. He joined us at New Hampshire Peace Action this spring, and that was just after a trip he took with the Community Peacemaker Teams to the West Bank. We've been looking forward to giving him some time to talk to us about this, and that's what we're going to have tonight. So please join me with a visible welcome to Lefty, and I will hand it over to him.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Peace and Justice Talks, and I am joining you from Manchester, New Hampshire. And I know that most of you are also from New Hampshire. So I'm going to jump right in. There's so much that I would love to share with you. I spent about a month in the West Bank, but there's so much that happened there that I just wish I could spend hours and days talking with you about what happened, but can't do that, not tonight at least. So let me share my screen with you. Let me pull this up. We just had it there a minute ago. Okay, can you see my screen now? Oops.
Yes, but I don't think that's the presentation you want.
I'm not sure what came up because it disappeared.
It did work before, so we know it is possible.
How are we doing?
What do you mean?
How's this? What's on your screen? Because now I've got the screen.
You have not shared.
Okay.
Greetings to folks entering a little late. We're just dealing with getting the tech in order. I have a sense we'll be starting any minute now. Oh, or any second even. Okay, so now I can see like all your pictures.
Glad you can. Okay, there we go.
It's still not full screen.
Yep, I'm getting there. But this should do right here. There we go. Yes?
There it is. Yep.
Hey, sorry about this. We'll be talking about being able to see and be seen. That's the theme for tonight. And we are finally being seen. In Palestine, they see you before you see yourself. Surveillance isn't just a presence, it's performance. The gaze of drones and towers, of soldiers and screens renders you suspect for simply existing. A 12-year-old chasing her sister becomes a blip on a monitor. A grandmother at a checkpoint becomes female adult. Lives reduced to metadata. Breath becomes provocation. You're always being observed. Truly, never know. Never truly know. The occupation watches, categorizes, controls. Its eyes are everywhere. Cloaked and camouflaged, stitched into the seams of fences, blinking from the corners of settler homes. But there is another gaze, the way Palestinians look back. Through keffiyehs, carvings, graffiti, their names whispered beneath curfews. To be seen here is to be exposed, but to see back, to hold on to memory, defiance, tenderness, that is resistance. That is the beginning of liberation. They are watching, but Palestine is not. We didn't come as tourists, but as witnesses. However, I did spend a couple of days in Jordan. This is Jerash in Jordan, an incredible archaeological site before I made it to Palestine. While I was there in Jordan, also throughout Palestine, there were signs that said USAID everywhere. So we started in Bethlehem. Our delegation moved through Palestine like threads in a tapestry already fraying at its edges. In the ruins of institutions held together by resilience, we listened not to statistics or summaries, but to the stubborn beating hearts of stories. In Hebron's old city, where the air itself seems to carry the weight of occupation, shopkeepers spoke of half smiles about permits and checkpoints in days that stretch into lifetimes. In Masafer Yatta, the delegation stood on scorched earth. Yes, if you've heard of Masafer Yatta, that's the place where that wonderful movie, No Other Land, took place. People who live, so some of the families that we visited, displaced and possessed, live now in caves carved by ancestors or in tents stitched together with grief and goat hair. Their homes have been reduced to rubble, their dreams swept up with the dust, yet they offered us tea, they offered us stories, and they offered us humanity. The CPT team, like scribes in a world too busy to listen, gather these stories, carry them home like lanterns into darkness, trying to illuminate the truth. These are shots from Palestine, from Bethlehem, where we started. A little bit of humor for the Stars and Bucks Cafe in Bethlehem. This is where I stayed the first night that I was there before I met up with the delegation. And this is just a view of this surrounding area around Bethlehem. On our first day with Zatar on our fingers and the scent of cardamom in the air, we sat down to our first meal together. This is the delegation, except for me. I'm the one taking the picture. We then ended up going to I have to show you the food. I love my food.
Definitely.
The Church of the Nativity is by tradition the place where Jesus was born. And you can see this is the main entrance, believe it or not. And you can see what used to look like a very large door back in the day, but when the Crusaders rebuilt it, they built this tiny door, which made you have to bow down in order to get into the church, but also prevented riders on horses or camels entering the church and ransacking it. Inside this beautiful, beautiful Church of the Nativity. This is by tradition the spot where Jesus was born. We ended up going to lots of NGOs. This is the first NGO that we visited, Dar al-Majus, which is right in Manger Square, right off the main downtown of Bethlehem. This is a place where they manufacture crafts and then sell them. So these beautiful earrings made of silver. This is calligraphy in the earring itself, which says, "I am free" in Arabic. And unfortunately, I didn't buy anything here. I wanted to bring some things home for my partner, but didn't get it. This calligraphy says, "Don't regret a struggle that made you grow." That's by the poet Mahmoud Darwish, the activist, excuse me. And even in the midst of war, they were happy, believe it or not. This is one of the many walls in the middle of Bethlehem. Everywhere you went, there were walls where there used to be roads. The roads were blocked off and walls built in their place, which made it very hard for folks to commute and to move anywhere. So the walls are not there just for separation and protection. They're also there to claim land. And if you notice, these segments of the wall are all removable. You can see at the top of the concrete slabs, there are little holes. That's so cranes can pull those slabs out and then remove them. And they do that periodically. They take this whole wall and they can move it as little as a few feet or miles or whatever they want to and claim the land behind it. Outside of this wall, just to the left, which you can't see, but you will be able to see in just a second. I'll show you a video. We ended up going to WIAM, which is an organization that's right next to the wall, so close that it doesn't divide, it dismembers this community. WIAM is the Arabic equivalent of the word agape in Koine Greek. For those of you who are Christians, agape means unconditional love. And so this center is a center to use traditional forms of conflict resolution from the Arab community to do conflict resolution both within the community and between the Arab community and the Jewish community. They help resolve disputes using this traditional Arab form of mediation known as sulha. And they also use some modern methods as well. They've been around since 1994, and they developed this because since the West Bank came under Israeli military occupation, there were no traditional ways of dealing with conflict, since all of the leaders, the village leaders, the Mukhtars, had been replaced by the Israelis as part of the occupation. So their authority was no longer recognized. So instead, they have started to appoint younger people who serve as Mukhtars and do this more traditional kind of mediation within the community. And again, this wall is literally right outside the door. They intentionally placed it there. This is the director of the center. His name is Zubi Zubi, spelled Z-O-U-G-H-B-I, Z-O-U-G-H-B-I. We went from here, walked just down the road to the Aida camp. If you come into the New Hampshire Peace Action office, on the wall in the office that Doreen and I share is a plaque from the Aida refugee camp, where a few years back, New Hampshire Peace Action helped to support the work that was going on there. And they made this beautiful handmade plaque that we display in our office. You'll see throughout Palestine symbols of the key. The key is symbolic of what happened during the Nakba in 1948. The Nakba is the catastrophe, and the catastrophe was May 15th, 1948. Israelis count as their day of liberation. Palestinians counted as the catastrophe because that was the beginning of the end of their independence and their aspirations for their own nationhood. Many people left or were forced to leave, but they thought they would be back very soon. So many of them took their keys with them. Many of them now, even though it's 77 years later, still have their keys in their family's possession. And this key symbol is a symbol of return. So every time you see that, that's a form of resistance where people are saying, yes, we no longer live here, but we have our keys still, and someday we'll be able to reclaim our homes. So the refugee camp is also surrounded by these walls, these ugly walls that are everywhere. And you can see here, I'm going to play this video so you can see.
Lefty, we can't hear you anymore.
Sorry, didn't realize that the audio overshadowed my voice. The wall goes everywhere. The wall is not just in one place in a linear fashion. As I said, they keep moving it and expanding. So this refugee camp is literally surrounded by the wall on 3 sides now. We were talking about seeing, and I don't know if you can tell, but there's a gray box right in the middle of the screen on the top of the blue section of wall. There is an automatic weapon, which is controlled not by humans, but can be overrun. The controls can be overrun by humans, but the controls are normally just used by AI. It's an experimental weapon, and if you get too close, you could be shot if you're considered a threat. The resistance takes many forms, including just painting graffiti on the walls. In the refugee camp is a store. Sells lots of different things, but one of the things that they do is they take weapons that are made, and you can see on the screen, made in the USA, tear gas canisters, hand grenades, other kinds of weapons, all made in the USA. And they take these weapons and they turn these gas canisters and others into beautiful pieces of art. I brought back for my partner a nice bangle bracelet made out of a tear gas canister, which now is something that she wears proudly as a form of resistance. And here are some examples of the jewelry that they've made from tear gas canisters, and some examples of keys that I talked about earlier. So in this form of resistance, the camp residents pick up these tear gas canisters, shell casings, and other US-made weapons of war, and repurpose them into this kind of jewelry and other items of beauty. Or examples of the kinds of weapons that they find on a daily basis. These big black things with the rubber tops, those are supposedly non-lethal weapons that are fired at people. And even though they're technically non-lethal, they can still kill and maim and do on a regular basis. And I just like this plaque that they had built, that they have on sale. The best way to make your dreams come true is to wake up. This is just what the refugee camp looks like. We think sometimes of these refugee camps as tents, but they're just buildings built wherever there's any land to try to make some space for people to live. And another form of resistance outside the soccer field where the kids play, show apartheid Israel, the red card. Red card, if you don't know soccer, is you get kicked out of the game for doing bad things. So just a little bit of humor. Some more food. Sorry, had to take advantage of that. This is where we stayed in Bethlehem with the whole delegation, the people from North America and Australia who were with us, and the Palestinians who are our guides. In Bethlehem is the Walled Off Hotel, not the Waldorf, but the Walled Off Hotel. It's a hotel that was that is purchased and designed by Banksy, the artist, and so there are all these fun little things that take place in the hotel. Another form of resistance. So here's a manger scene, nativity scene with a stylized wall behind it. And again, you can see the little holes in the top where cranes can, with the real wall, take those segments and just pull them up and move them to another place. Turning these towers into an amusement park ride. Instead of reception, there's rejection. You may have seen this famous painting by Banksy. So it is a hotel that you can stay in. It wasn't open when we were there. Right outside is this very famous segment of the wall, make hummus, not walls. We visited a number of NGOs. This NGO is of the Sun. This is a women-run organization. A lot of the stereotypes that we hear of Palestine and Arab communities in general is that they do not respect the leadership of women. While they may not have the same standards that we aspire to in the United States, and even here we don't have them the way we want them to be. Let's be clear about that. In Palestine, there are many women-led organizations, and Women of the Sun does a lot of training. They do micro loans to women to start businesses. They train women to do a number of different kinds of jobs, and they have an electoral program where they're training women to run for office and to serve in the parliament, the equivalent of the parliament for the Palestinian Authority. Many of you will know who this man is. Anybody want to recognize this gentleman? This is Mazen Kumsia, who's a scientist, a storyteller, and a keeper of ancestral bones and biological truths. He described when we were there, Palestine, he's an MD as well. He wanted to describe Palestine as a body racked with disease. And he described it not as a sudden illness, but as a virus that came and went. And not as a virus that came and went, but as a chronic affliction. And he called it that disease settler colonialism. And it's the kind of sickness that arrives with flags and Bibles, bulldozers and bureaucrats claiming to cure while cutting off apart. He was very brilliant. And after he just decided, designated what the illness was, he said that there are only three prognoses known to history for colonial settlerism. One is that the colonizers leave, and that's rare, but not impossible. Two is genocide, the systematic slow motion dressed in the legalese of security and self-defense. And that's also rare. But the third, and the most common, is that the colonizers and the colonized, after getting tired of war and destruction, find a way to live together in the same land, in the same story, in the same breath. And that's what Mazen looks forward to, rather than a two-state solution. Many Palestinians, Mazen included, look forward to a small d democratic state that has Jews and Palestinians, Arabs, everyone living with equal rights. He also runs a little zoo. These were some of the hyenas that were there. We also visited Alice and her family, who also live right outside of Bethlehem. Uh, this beautiful valley once was owned by her family, and we're only calling her Alice. She doesn't want her name known other than that. Uh, in this valley, they and their family, their extended family owned all of this land, but settler colonialism is creeping in. And you can see some of these more modern buildings that are being built here in different places, knocking down, tearing up all the old olive trees so that they can claim the land for themselves. And this is, even though I can't share her full name or her real name, that's Alice telling us the story of what happened there. They have tried to rebuild. They had a well-known restaurant in that valley that has been knocked down 3 times now. They have tried to rebuild it. And each time they rebuild it, it gets knocked down again because they're told they don't have a permit, even though their family has owned this land for centuries. So we went out to community outside of Hebron. This is another way that land is claimed. This high territory was claimed because it's the best place for cell phone towers, and also for other infrastructure for the settlers. This is just outside of the city of Hebron, but all of this is set up not for the people who live in the neighborhood, but for the settlers in Hebron and in the surrounding communities. We visited with the Al-Tamimi family, who owned all of this land before. And they had this beautiful tent set up that we were able to participate in this discussion. So while we were there, they served us tea, they served us fruits and pastries, and they spoke of how the settlers, people that they said were imported from distant lands and armed with what they called the theology of entitlement. I love that phrase. The settlers live with uninterrupted electricity, abundant clear water, thick 3-inch pipes of water, whereas the Palestinians have 1/2-inch pipes for the water. The electricity that runs over their land is not allowed to be used by the Palestinians, but those electrical transmission wires, and we'll see this over and over again, goes to only the settlers and not to the Palestinians. Well, there is a picture of me. I didn't know if I had any pictures of me. So this is the view right outside where we were staying in Hebron. Hebron is a divided city, and the division is not what you would think. The division is lower and upper parts of the city. The old city is Palestinian, but it's surrounded by settler newer buildings. One of the ways you can tell which buildings are Palestinian, which ones are Jewish buildings, is that in the West Bank, anything that has a water tower on top of it is almost assuredly a Palestinian home, because they only get a little bit of water allocated to them every day. Whereas there are pipes that run directly into each of the settler homes. So this is outside where we were staying. This barrier that exists on the street is there to prevent the Palestinians from getting to the Jewish settler area. So even though this street used to run straight through there and you could just walk into the Jewish area, you can no longer do that. And if you're a Palestinian or if you're a Jew, you have to go through one of the checkpoints. But if you're a Palestinian, the chances are that you won't be allowed through the checkpoint. These are just some scenes of the old city, and you can see more barriers. The Stars of David are put up there not as anti-Jewish graffiti, but as pro-Jewish graffiti, claiming this land, this area, as Jewish land. So even though this was all Palestinian land just a couple of decades ago, everything beyond this barrier here is now claimed as Jewish settler land, and Palestinians are not allowed to go there at all. and many of the Palestinian areas are blocked off. In this scene, you can see some windows on the right above the street that are caged in. And you can see some barriers over the street. That's because in those areas, the Jewish settlers throw things onto the Palestinian lands below. Up above, the second floor in the street is all Jewish settler occupied apartments and homes, and they throw trash, they spit, they throw feces, they urinate out the windows, and throw stones on the Palestinians walking below. So every place where there are Jewish apartments on the second floor or above, you'll see these barriers over the street to protect the Palestinians who have to walk and drive on the first floor. Here's a better view of some of the barriers that are put up above. And here's an area where nobody has even bothered to clean it anymore because everything was just thrown there and Palestinians can't get in to clean it up. So they just left all the trash and the debris. Our gang, again, we had many good meals. Great falafel everywhere. And cats everywhere. Muhammad loved cats. So Muslims love cats everywhere throughout the Middle East. You'll find cats. You'll also find lots of cars like this just on the side of the street that were shot. I don't know the circumstances around this, but this is just a car parked on the street that was just abandoned after it was shot. And you can see that the bullet holes went through the driver's side of the windshield. Everywhere there are barriers. This is one barrier that set up a checkpoint that prohibits kids from getting to their school day every day. But even in the midst of all of this that's going on, there is joy, there is celebration. We saw this car getting decorated outside a wedding store where they had gotten this ready. I asked the man who was doing this, and he said that the next day after this, there was going to be a wedding, and they had decorated the car, and there's going to be a little caravan. So it was nice to see some positive things happening as well. So one of the problems that you will see over and over again in the West Bank and Gaza too, but I was not there, are barriers set up in arbitrary ways. So one of the things that we did was it was called a school run. So a few days during the time we were in Hebron, which is called Al-Khalil in Arabic, we went to the checkpoint where the boys were going to their elementary school and their middle school. Every day while we were there, the checkpoint was closed. What was the reason? We never found out. All we know is that boys would show up, get ready to cross the checkpoint to go to school, and all it takes is one soldier. It doesn't need a colonel or anybody in command to make a decision about closing the checkpoint. A 19-year-old soldier with no experience can close the checkpoint for any reason whatsoever. While we were there, the checkpoint to allow the boys to go to school was closed every single day for no reason. So we hung out with the boys most mornings and played Uno once in a while. This is inside meeting with one of the organizations that was a little more radical. They were giving us some information about how to get to Youth Against Settlements, which is a Palestinian organization that we had a hard time getting to. And when they were going to accompany us to Youth Against Settlements, but then when they got to the checkpoint, they recognized some of the soldiers and realized that these people were not going to be allowed through the checkpoint. And if they tried to go through with us, that we probably wouldn't be allowed in either, because these folks are already known in the community as being supporters of the Palestinians. And so anybody who would be sharing their viewpoint would not be allowed through the checkpoint. Any of you like? Turkish Delight, one of my favorites. This is what the checkpoint looks like, and sometimes we were allowed through, sometimes we weren't. And these are just some scenes of everyday life in the community. This is a glass blower shop with some beautiful glass. I have to show you.
حضرتك في السي بي تي او هذا انا اسمك بهاء شركة
A lot of this is just a form of resistance, people living their normal everyday lives, doing the arts, playing music. Love to share more with you, but we don't have time today. But it's important to recognize everything that's happening, that while all of this repression is happening, the occupation is still happening, there's still lots of creativity. And the creativity is a form of resistance. Even while all of this is going on, this is hard to see, but this little vehicle and these people who are walking are soldiers. The soldiers can show up anywhere, and they have the ability to do pretty much anything they want to use. So when the soldiers show up, the children, the teens, the men all disappear. They run as fast as they can because it's so arbitrary that you can be completely innocent walking down the street, and somebody doesn't like you for any reason, you can be arrested and detained for months at a time. Hebron used to have a strong Jewish community, but there was a massacre in the 1920s that wiped out almost the entire community. And so until very recently, until the occupation, there was no Jewish community, but they have started to reestablish that. This Star of David comes from the period back in the 19th century when there was a strong Jewish community in Hebron. Throughout Hebron, in the Jewish settler areas, there were lots of historical monuments that are put up everywhere, markers that claim that it's Jewish land, and I'll show you some more of those in just a moment. This is inside the Turkish bath. And I showed you the view from inside and outside. This is inside our apartment building, looking down at a Jewish settler street. So even though we were in an Arab Palestinian area, we had no access directly to go to this Jewish street, even though it's right outside our window. I've been going on for a while. Why don't I stop and see if people have any questions before we move on to the next section? Amy, can you monitor that?
Yeah, I'm not, yes, let's definitely do some Q&A now. Is it possible for you to unshare your screen? Great. Yeah, so I'm going to turn first to the chat, but people can also put their hands up. But let's start with Deborah's question, which has been here for a while. So this is referring to earlier on, but she's wondering, is Israel's use of autonomous AI weapons considered a human rights violation?
They claim that they're not autonomous, but so I believe that it probably would be. They claim because they have override and there are people monitoring the screens that it's not a fully autonomous weapon. But from the messages we got from Palestinians living in the shadow of that weapon that I showed you, they claim that there have been instances where dogs and other people just walking by have been shot at. And so they believe very strongly that the AI is in effect.
Two things. First, Lefty, if you're able to increase your audio a little bit, someone has just asked for that.
Okay, is that any better?
Maybe a little. Okay, so Arnie's question. What can you say about the role of the Palestinian Authority at this time?
So we didn't interact with the Palestinian Authority at all, Arnie. What we did find was that nobody likes the Palestinian Authority. And that is part of the reason folks in the West Bank gave us for an explanation of why that Hamas in the early part of the 2010s won the election and why they are the ruling party in Gaza. It's because not that they liked Hamas, but because they hated the Palestinian Authority. Palestinian Authority is looked at as collaborative with the Israelis in many cases. It's looked at as corrupt and overly bureaucratic. So while the Israelis don't issue permits for anything, in order to get a permit, even from the Palestinian Authority, and you'll still need one from the Israelis, but in order to get the Palestinian version of that, you have to pay bakshish or bribes very often. So the Palestinian Authority is not looked at positively at all, at least from the folks that we interacted with on.
Thanks. Will has a question. It's much better if you use the reaction button, but I saw him, so go for it, Will.
Yeah, two questions, Lefty. Number one, were you able to meet with Issa Amro, who many people consider to be the Palestinian Martin Luther King? And the second question would be, were you able to meet with any of the settlers or a representative of the settlers in Hebron or outside of Hebron? Yeah.
So we were not able to meet with Issa. He was not in Palestine when we met with him, but we did meet at his facility that he is often at Youth Against Settlements. So yeah, we wanted to, and I'm sorry that we didn't meet with Issa. We heard that he was also in Jerusalem just as we were leaving, and that we missed him at a bookstore like an hour apart, but we didn't get to meet him. As far as meeting with the settlers, no, that was not part of our mission. Our mission was twofold. One was to serve as a witness to what was happening as people with privilege from Western nations. The Palestinian people should be believed based on what they're reporting. They show videos, they show documentation, still they're not believed. Unfortunately, because of, I'll just speak for myself, because I have all kinds, having white, North American, male privilege, educated, all of those privileges, I am listened to more than somebody from Palestine who tells the personal story. So our witness was very, very important. And that's why they wanted us there, because they realized that by my telling the story, I would have a better chance of reaching out to folks than they could. Number two was accompaniment. And so we wanted to be there. We did mosque runs at the checkpoints. We did school runs at the checkpoints. So it wasn't our purpose to do that. However, when we tried to meet with Youth Against Settlements, it was the lone facility, the lone building still within the Jewish area. And so the settlers completely surrounded it. When we were there, we didn't know exactly where to go. It was hard to find. There's no GPS that would actually help us. And we couldn't get any folks to accompany us because the Palestinians weren't allowed through the neighborhood. But when we got there, some settlers we think they knew who we were, and they tried to bring us into their home, which at first sounds like they were just being hospitable. But we found out later that the day before, some other folks who were trying to visit Youth Against Settlements were co-opted, and they used the words kidnapped by the settlers and were not allowed out until some soldiers came and moved them out of the area. So those folks were not even allowed to visit Youth Against Settlements. I've spent lots of time, Will, in Israel proper. I did a master's degree at the University of Haifa just a few years ago. I did when I was younger, I was an aspiring archaeologist. I did a number of digs and studied at Hebrew University and the American Schools of Oriental Research in Jerusalem. So I personally have met with settlers, and I didn't feel the need for that. That wasn't our purpose, though.
Okay, Sheila, I'm gonna let you unmute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Super. So I'm wondering, this is really interesting, Lefty. I'm really glad you're doing this presentation. I'm wondering, the settlers, obviously the folks that you spoke with don't want the settlers there. But did you talk to them about what they see as practically as the long-term solution? Because, you know, one can say, well, we want a single state or a secular state or two states, but you know, the practicalities of how they see getting there. Did you talk to people about that at all and get any reactions?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. When I've been going to Israel for 40-something years now, longer than that. When I first started going, on both sides, Palestinians and Jews both felt that there was hope for the possibility of a two-state solution. I heard almost none of that from Palestinians. If they were offered a real separate state, they would probably accept that. But the consensus now is that because Israel is so established, the Jews are not going anywhere. They know that. You're not going to have everybody pack up from Tel Aviv and Jerusalem and Haifa and just leave and go someplace else. That's not going to happen. So the only possible solution most Palestinians feel is for a small d democratic single state with full civil and legal rights for everyone.
Which is what we've seen most recently in similar cases like South Africa and Northern Ireland. Well, you know, they're working on it, but oh, Sheila, I'm gonna let you finish. I think she wanted to follow up.
Yeah, I did. Thanks, Amy. But in terms of practicalities, in terms of how you get to the desired solution, did you talk to people about how they see practically that happening? Because I think we all know that it's been such a difficult and torturous road to find a solution.
Yeah, I found that the Palestinians are like my Jewish brothers and sisters in that if you have 5 Palestinians in the room, you might have 7 solutions. And we had many, many different ideas. The problem is that there were so many steps that need to take place, Sheila. There is no being able to just set up NGOs, being able to have any kind of civil discourse, being able to have conversations without having fear of arrest. Those are the minimum things that need to happen before anything can happen. So getting to practicality of being able to set up a state or have negotiations, if you start talking about that, one of the statistics that we've heard over and over again is that between 90 and 99% of all adult Palestinian males have either been held in custody with administrative detention or full arrest. When you have that happening, I can't tell you how many times, Sheila, we were talking with people and the guide would be discussing something with us and they would notice some settlers walk by within earshot, so they would stop talking and bow their heads, not because they were falsely being humble, but because they realized that without doing that, that they might be targeted. So if you can't even have a conversation on the streets, getting to practical solutions is going to be really hard. And I know I want that answer too, Sheila, but they didn't have any concrete solution. There were as many solutions as there were people in.
I think we have time for, well, let's have Donna go, and then I'll try to get a few from the chat. Donna, I think it will let you, yeah.
Why don't, actually, you know what? Go ahead to the chat because the answer that was just given partially answered my question. So go ahead to the chat. Those are important questions. Thanks.
Okay, sure. I would like to get Patience, her question in here in particular. What can people in New Hampshire do to resist the occupation and help the Palestinians, or the Palestinian cause, she wrote?
So probably all the things that you're doing already. I'll start with the basic kinds of things. Join New Hampshire Peace Action. If you're not a member of Peace Action already, do that. Sign up for our emails, make contributions. The grassroots organizing that we're doing here in New Hampshire is really, really important. So, you know, it's that old cliche, act locally, think globally. And if you're thinking about the global issues, we need to organize locally. We're doing some pretty incredible work, both through New Hampshire Peace Action and through the New Hampshire Coalition for a Just Peace in the Middle East and other local organizations. Any organizations that are doing local organizing are really, really important. At the same time, there are lots of organizations that are doing incredible work in Palestine. So Community Peacemaker Teams is an international organization. It's based in the United States, but all of the money that gets contributed to Community Peacemaker Teams for Palestine stays there in Palestine to do this kind of work there. There are also the humanitarian organizations that are doing relief work. That's vital as well. So there's the whole spectrum of the kind of work that needs to happen. There's the grassroots organizing that's happening here. There's the humanitarian relief that needs to happen on the ground there. There's the organizing that needs to happen there. So I would say participate in all of those things, but participate in ways that you can spread the word as well. Don't assume that your neighbor, your uncle, your grandfather doesn't agree with you. Assume that they love justice and don't want to see people brutally murdered by an occupation force. And share the kind of information that you're getting from these different organizations. Have non-confrontational conversations with your family and friends. All of those kinds of things are really, really important.
We're getting very close to the end. I think this is a good one, though. Moji asked, how did this experience change you internally?
So you may have read a couple of my pieces on Substack, but one that was really personal for me was the story of talking about the fact that I grew up as a Zionist. I didn't know it was called that, but I grew up in a Jewish neighborhood. Most of my closest friends were Jewish. In high school, most of my girlfriends were Jewish. I was married into a Jewish community. I love the Jewish people, and I bought into the whole story. And while I knew intellectually and had been part of visiting Palestine many, many times, this trip was the first time that I spent almost all of my time in Palestine proper. Some of you have seen Northern Land, the community where that took place. I went there the day before we visited one of the hamlets within that community. Another house was demolished by the Israeli occupation forces. I have slides of that, because so many I couldn't obviously share them all tonight. But I broke down a number of times. There were times where I just had to go off by myself because emotionally I just couldn't handle all the stories of detention and murder and destruction of homes, of people. I carry around in my pocket this piece of a home. This was the floor of one of the homes that was destroyed in that community the day before we went there. So it was overwhelming. It was overwhelming. And I still, react emotionally when I have to relay some of the stories that I heard.
Thank you so much, Lefty. Actually, if you're real quick, I have one more question. Ellen wondered if you met the author of Christ in the Rubble, Isaac Munther? Nope.
No.
Okay.
Lutheran pastor, correct?
Sorry, go ahead.
Lutheran pastor in Bethlehem.
I don't know.
I believe so. Yeah, he was also in the States. He wasn't there, but Al Mitty, one of the people in the delegation, was a Lutheran and tried to stop by the church, but we weren't able to see him either.
Okay, well, I'm going to be bringing this to a close. I have some other information to convey. I do want to first just say thank you so much, Lefty, for sharing about your trip and, this really personal story of your time there. I think it's really affecting to hear from someone who was right there on the ground and to, see what is happening. Okay, as I said.
Chris asked questions that was there.
Okay, be fast.
Yes, absolutely. I always find optimism in our history, both in this country and around the world. Martin Luther King used the quote, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice." I believe that. It's not actually a Martin Luther King quote, but it is something that I really believe in. And if we look at our history over and over and over again, we've proven that to be true. We in our history in the United States got rid of slavery. We got women the right to vote. We got union movements. There were over and over, we've been able to do things like stop the Vietnam War. I think that we can do this. I think that there's a global movement. I think that in the lifetime of some of us, we'll see a free, small d democratic Palestine.
Thank you. This series, let me let folks know, is free and open to everyone. That said, we really appreciate it when you give us your financial support. nhpeaceaction.org/donate. I think I also got that into the chat. And we really want you to stay in touch with us. As Lefty said, we're doing a lot of work, and we want you to be a part of it. nhpeaceaction.org is where you can learn more about what we're working on and especially what events we're planning. Here's a few things coming right up. Let me flag our Ceasefire Now vigils. Is that tomorrow? No, Wednesday, June 4th, 2 to 3 p.m. We'll be at Representative Pappas's office, 3rd Street in Dover. Thursday, June 5th, noon to 1, folks will be at City Plaza in Concord. And then Wednesday, June 11th, 2 to 3, we're outside of Senator Shaheen's Dover office. We also hope that folks have on their calendars June 14th, National Day of Action. These protests are happening while Donald Trump is planning this military parade in his honor and also to celebrate the Army in DC. There's going to be lots of events, and nokings.org is where we found that you can go to find out what's near you. And online, our next Peace and Justice conversation is Monday, June 16th, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. It will be on Fierce Vulnerability for Nonviolent Social Change with Kazu Haga. He's a trainer and practitioner of nonviolence and restorative justice, and has been doing this for well over 25 years now. And he's going to share with us. Join us in person on Saturday, June 28th, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. for our annual meeting, featuring an update on our work, a potluck lunch, and a great workshop on how to have difficult conversations with people you don't agree with. And that's in Allenstown, I think. Doreen, am I getting that right?
Bear Brook State Park.
Thank you, at Bear Brook State Park. Also put on your calendar, Monday, June 30th, 7 p.m., our Peace and Justice conversation will tackle the collision of anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism with our good friend, New Hampshire activist Sharon Rakusin. So thank you everyone for coming and being part of this. Thank you for all the work that folks are doing and for being engaged on really difficult issues at a really difficult but incredibly important time. And many, many thanks to Lefty for sharing with us tonight. And if you can join me in some kind of visible, thank you. We'd appreciate that.
Let me just say in closing, which I should have said earlier, I put in the chat my email and phone number. I'm willing to share this kind of presentation anywhere. I shouldn't say anywhere. If you want me to fly to the Bahamas, I will do that, but you're gonna have to pay for it. Seriously, anywhere in New Hampshire for sure. If it's outside of the state, we can talk about that.
Good night,